when I'm not writing treatises on the philosophy of conspiracy theories or detangling the dialectics of musicians you haven't heard of. I am consuming all kinds of media. Movie, book, music, video game, everything. I'm a snob, and I don't have enough time to make a video about everything I see within a year, so I've decided to get some stuff off of my chest. Welcome to the first annual Razzles, the best awards show on YouTube. Here's how this will work. This is not a 2022 exclusive list. I watched so many movies within a year, and most of the interesting ones come from previous years. So this list will be unstuck in time. And I'm also going to do my best to only include first-time viewings. For example, Lingua Ignota's Sinner Get Ready is an album that I fell in love with this year, and it greatly moved my soul. But I first heard it in 2021, so I'm not going to count it right now. I'm also going to exclude rewatches because otherwise every year Old Boy would win. Unless it's something like very dramatic, like if suddenly something has clicked for me. Note that there were so many things that didn't make the cut, but everything here is something that I deeply adore. I want to take one more aside to mention some things that I wasn't able to see at the time of recording, but they could potentially make the list. And I haven't been able to watch The Whale. It doesn't come out until January in Australia. And I'm a little bit skeptical about the premise, but I do want to see my boy Brendan Fraser act his little butt off. Ignore the obvious joke. There's a movie called EO. It's about a donkey. I haven't been able to see it, but I really want to watch that little donkey. It looks delightful. Better looking donkey than the Banshees of Inisherin. Don't get me started. There's a documentary about David Lynch's relationship to the Wizard of Oz, simply titled Lynch Oz. I want to watch the hell out of that. What else is there? Mr. Organ. If you haven't seen Tickled by New Zealand's David Farrier, then you must go and treat yourself. Watch that. It's one of the most delightfully fucked up things I've ever seen in my life. His new documentary is coming soon, and I'm really excited for it. If there's anything else I can think of in voiceover, I'll probably put it here. Starting off my top 22 of 2022, we have a Senegalese film called Salam. This is admittedly a bit of a flawed film, but it is a rip snorter and a spine chiller for the ages. Salam is many things. It has elements of crime, drama, western, revenge, horror, and action. It's all over the place genre-wise, and it is sometimes messy because of it. But where this film shines is its visual presentation and its themes. The story is about three mercenaries, known as the Bangui Hyenas, escaping a coup and then hiding out from the law in a small coastal town. It is incredibly tense for the first half, and then it shifts into something unexpected but ultimately welcome. There is a surprising humanity given to these drug lords, and the film explores the traumas of colonialism, the value of Pan-Africanism, and how trauma compounds and then reinforces itself. It's on Shudder, it's one of the most underseen films of the year, and you should absolutely give it a watch. I must confess, movies about dementia don't affect me very much at all. I'm sure that one day, if one of my parents becomes sick, films like Amour, Relic, and The Father, maybe then they'll begin to resonate with me. Then comes along our 21st pick, Vortex.
La vie est un rêve, non?
Oui. La vie est un rêve dans un rêve.
Gaspar Noé, Argentinian-born provocateur and mischief maker, gifts us of one of his most restrained and mature films yet. Instead of making explosive sequences of violence and sexual deviance, we follow the final week of a couple dealing with dementia. It is profoundly miserable. Dario Argento, legendary director of Suspiria, gives a sublime performance of a man barely keeping his life together, while looking after the love of his life, afflicted by a burdensome illness. Argento learned French just for this film. That is dedication. The scenes with him, his wife, and their son are profoundly moving. The conversations, the rhythms of speech, and the awkward moments are shockingly lifelike. It reminds me of moments in my own life where I've had to ask a parent about what they want me to do with them after they're gone. It's always a hard conversation to have, but you have to do it, and Vortex feels just like that. Gaspar Noé says that he wanted his audience to squirm over Irreversible, to scream at climax, and he wanted to bring them to sobbing tears with Vortex, and I love him for that. Some horror films wish to fill you with an unrelenting dread. Others wish to make you squirm. And then our 20th pick asks the profound question, what if a little girl had a big ol' egg? Hatchling is the debut picture from Finnish director Hanna Bergholm, and she has a bright future ahead of her. The film features a young girl with a picturesque life, a happy father, an influenced mother, and a snot-nosed little brother. As the film progresses though, we see the girl adopt an egg that continues to grow bigger and bigger. What the egg means in the film is sometimes vague and others blunt. It represents her burgeoning womanhood, her struggle with bulimia, her guilty feelings of envy, and her desire to be loved. The scariest part of this movie, like with Tale of Two Sisters and Hereditary, is how the scares come from the familial bonds. The mother, an aspiring vlogger, is a narcissist who struggles to actually care for her family. The way she treats her family is horrible, and as someone with a very long history of living with self-hating narcissists, this was a spine chiller and a blast. The film isn't traditionally scary. Bughuul doesn't jump out and scare you every 5 minutes. Instead, you have a young girl struggling to come to terms with her emotions and expressing them in tremendously unhealthy ways. Its abstractions, shockingly, come across as too close for comfort. This one's also on Shudder. Give it a go. Relive some traumas from your childhood that you buried long ago. Hooray!
Mä pidän susta huolta.
If you ever wanted to see the little man from Inglourious Basterds pontificate about the nature of conspiracy theories, then do I have the 19th pick for you?
I have a story.
Okay.
I'm in West Texas, where this family just lost their daughter to an opiate overdose.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, it's not someone I was close to.
Vengeance is one of the most bizarrely touching films about loss and grief that I have ever seen. First-time director BJ Novak directs, writes, and stars in this film. He plays a podcaster investigating the death of a girl that he once had a fling with. Her family invites him down to Texas, and he bonds with this bizarre group of people that he somewhat feels superior to. The film walks a tonal tightrope. It avoids coming across as twee by dealing with seriously dark subject matter. It finds pitch-black humour in the depths of despair, and it's the first film that I've ever seen to investigate the new conspiracism. The video that I am the proudest of making this year is my video about the nature of conspiracy theories. Sometimes you just feel as if a movie was made just for you. Vengeance is a reminder to touch grass sometimes, and to appreciate the people around you, instead of pontificating about how smart you are. It's almost unique because, aside from our 17th pick, it's one of the few films to investigate the relation between grief and conspiracism.
Where are you right now? I'm in an Uber.
I read about 40 books this year, which is generally below average for me. I rarely read for pleasure these days because I read to research stuff for videos. So, my favourite book that I read this year goes to one of the few books that I actually read for pleasure.
Jean McConville was 38 years old when she was dragged from her Belfast home by gunpoint, in front of her 10 children, never to be seen alive again. Her case became one of the most notorious unsolved murders during the period of unrest in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles.
Patrick Radden Keefe is an investigative journalist. Last year he wrote a groundbreaking book about the family who made OxyContin. That was great, but my favourite book of his goes to his 2018 piece on the history of the Irish Republican Army. Say Nothing is an important book because, as the title suggests, members of the IRA don't tattle on one another. So this book, with its original research, interviews, and insane attention to detail, will stand as a really definitive account of the history of standing up to oppression. Something like this is important for strange lefties like me, because we should learn from the mistakes of the IRA. The framing device of the book is the murder of a mother of 6 children.
In front of her 10 children.
And the book uses this to discuss conflicting themes of justice, censorship, and ultimately the value of records, of having information that future generations can read. This book endlessly fascinated me, and that's why it's my book of the year. 2 boys were assaulted in their youth. One can't remember, and the other can never forget.
Summer I was 8 years old. 5 hours disappeared from my life. 5 hours.
Mysterious Skin is a bleak film about childhood sexual assault. The antagonist of the film, the boys' baseball coach, is monstrous, a serial abuser of children who has recruited one of the main characters to help him. He disappears early on. Undoubtedly he has moved to several more towns and done this again. But most shockingly, he's tender and soft. It is so scary because he fools one of the boys into thinking he's doing him a service. Mysterious Skin is a very hard movie to talk about. It follows a small group of queer youth in rural America, a young sex worker, and a man obsessed with aliens. They only meet at the end of the film, and that scene is one of the bleakest things I've ever seen. The film is beautifully shot, shockingly tender, and a heartbreaker for the ages.
It's a huge part of me.
In my Nitram video, I discussed how Caleb Landry Jones won Best Actor at Cannes in 2021. Out of curiosity, I looked at who won Best Actress, and it turns out that The Worst Person in the World was released in Australia in very early 2022. The rest of the world came out in 2021, here it came out in 2022. And the main thing that I learned from this film is that you should never watch this after you go through a breakup.
Okej.
Ha det.
Ha det. Vi var ikke utro, da.
Vi var ikke det.
Vi var ikke det.
Nei.
This is a Danish film, and it follows the life of a young narcissist, drifting through life, dealing with relationships, and generally vibing. I feel like I should hate this movie. I despise twee stories, with men writing empowered women who have lots of sex and flash the camera, and they're just so spontaneous. But the lead performance here is genuinely brilliant. She feels like a real person, and the drama of the film does not paint her in a hugely positive light. The genius of the film is that Julie is not a bad person, but she does lots of bad things, and these bad things are so human and understandable and yet subtly abhorrent. This film felt like the entire Before trilogy distilled down into one movie. Our 15th pick broke my heart into teeny tiny pieces.
My father just died.
So you came to on their own?
Why else would I be here? Hello, Esty.
Disobedience is a film about a Jewish funeral. An estranged daughter returns to town and reconnects with an old flame. This film features 3 characters: Rachel Wise as the estranged daughter, and a husband and wife that she knew in her youth. As someone who has little patience for slow burn romances, this film was surprisingly exhilarating to take in. I think what got to me was the religious themes, because Jewish philosophy is deeply informed by themes of skepticism towards authority, suffering, and living authentically. Disobedience pushes into taboo areas about how queer people are treated in Orthodox communities. The film is shot relatively safely, focusing more on inter-character drama than cinematic theatrics. And this movie hurt the old feelings to watch, because it's almost taboo to express what you want within this space. These characters are trapped and in denial of being trapped, so the love affair is an act of defiance. And where the film ends isn't quite predictable, but you know it was coming from the start, and that makes it all the more tragic.
I want you to give me my freedom.
When I first heard Godspeed You Black Emperors lift your skinny fists like antennas to heaven in 2018, I thought it was just okay. It's very well composed. And it sounds rich, and the recording is gorgeous, but I didn't get why people had such a rabid and unyielding love for it. But Godspeed You, Black Emperor kept looking at me from my collection. I bought it years ago on sale, and then when I was writing something earlier this year, I put it on for background noise. And I had to stop writing because it suddenly clicked for me. Post-rock is entirely about using the cliches and the verbs of rock music to create emotions to be felt in your body. This opus left me reeling, tension unlike anything I'd ever felt before. I couldn't stop listening to it. The tension reaches a searing climax, and that was a catharsis that I had never felt in the audio medium before. Oh my fucking god, this album's great. I don't know how 3,000 Years of Longing exists, because achingly romantic movies about feelings and stories just don't get made anymore. It was made because this filmmaker was in a very unique position. George Miller, following up Fury Road, managed to get this moderately budgeted epic made, and it is such a triumph. The movie features two people, a professor of literature and a djinn, sitting in a hotel room and talking about the natures of storytelling. We travel across 3,000 years as Idris Elba, who has literally never been better, tells us his tale of longing. He's often contradicted and challenged by Tilda Swinton, as she pokes holes in his tales. They make for perhaps the best pair of the year. I'm so grateful that I got to see this in a theatre. It was an emotional experience, and I cherished every single moment of it.
I have a wish.
The Rehearsal is one of the most talked about shows of the year, and I think it is a crime against humanity.
Everything that's happened so far today, I've rehearsed it dozens of times. These exact words in a replica of your home.
I loved how uncomfortable it made me feel. It is the most autistic thing I've ever seen in my life. Nathan Fielder hosts this show, which is initially about helping people solve small problems in grand and expensive ways. The first episode is a masterpiece in its own right. It would make this spot if it were just by itself.
This is where it would happen. So with the clock now ticking, I invited Core into my secret warehouse to begin his rehearsal.
Well, this is the perfect replica. I mean, there's not even the funhouse version of it. It looks, wow.
And the brilliant quality of this show is that with each episode, the premise changes slightly. What once started as helping people rehearse for small problems evolves into what would a monster do if they actually had this kind of power and they had these many resources at their disposal. I think that maybe the show is perhaps one episode too long, but you start the show with laughter, and you leave it with an unrelenting capitalist realism dread, and it is utterly genius. My game of the year goes to, no surprise at all, Elden Ring. I'm so basic. I put 100 hours into this game back in February. My partner at the time was quite upset at me, sorry, and I haven't touched it since because otherwise I would never make a video ever again. Breaking into the top 10, this next film asks the daring question. Wouldn't it be fucked up if you worked in a kitchen?
Thanks for coming.
Let's make some chips, yeah? Chop some spuds. Yes, sir. Enjoy your drinks. Thank you.
Service on table 20.
Boiling Point is a one-take movie about a kitchen falling apart at the seams. My friend Marina calls these stories troubles. Because, well, the people get into some trouble and you and them have a very bad time watching them. And these kind of stories, like Shiva Baby, they're my favourite. Boiling Point is unpretentious and simple. We follow some restaurant staff on a particularly tense and busy evening at a high-class restaurant. It's a tense atmosphere that begs you not to scream during it, as if you were a kettle atop of a stove. And what I love about this movie is it has really interesting themes. the way men and women are treated differently in the service industry, the class relations of the small business. But these themes aren't at the forefront. They are left to the side to chew on after the film. It leaves you with something to think about. But the main course is a tense nightmare where you can barely breathe from stress. It's a miracle movie.
This is your fault. You don't turn up on time. You don't do the orders. You come in sneaking a food.
I did it! I finally did it. I'm a film bro. I have a Luca Guadagnino film on my end of the year list. Yay!
Dad! You didn't. When the cops get here, you have to be good and gone.
I can't help you anymore. I know it's not your fault. You were born this way.
I like Call Me By Your Name and Suspiria well enough. They're tremendously well made, but I don't really feel any kind of emotional connection to them. Bones and All got my ass. I was completely on the same wavelength as it. The film is about two young cannibals going on a road trip, discovering themselves and eating a lot of people. Where Call Me By Your Name and Suspiria take themselves seriously, Bones and All revels in the absurdity of its own premise. It's never farcical, but it feels like a B-movie from the 70s. But it has this art house gloss to it. It looks amazing, but it's so silly. Like, if you've seen this movie, and you're like, yeah, that was pretty good, I don't know why you're so hyped about it. Watch it again. Don't watch it as a drama. Watch it as a comedy. It is uproarious. I giggled so much, and the mushy romance contrasted with cannibalism only makes it funnier. Timothée Chalamet also looks like an ice addict who would ask you for a lighter in a rural bus mall. I'm also like so sick of queer subtext in my horror movies. Give me queer text. I want the queer shit to be at the forefront. There's a part where like Timothée Chalamet is like doing some funky stuff to a young fella that he's about to eat, and just as the young fella fucking awesome. Yes, this is what I need in my movies.
You don't think I'm a bad person.
All I think is that I love you.
My album of 2022 goes to my British boys, my loony lads, my destructive dudes, Black Midi and their album Hellfire. What genre do they play? Yes! They're technically a noise rock outfit of 4, but they oscillate between jazz, hardcore, no-wave, post-rock. They're very hard to pin down. They're like Talking Heads for Death Grips fans. And Hellfire was one hell of a shotgun blast to the face. Jazz rock, flamenco, hardcore noise. It's a masterwork of disorientation. Black Midi specialize in making strangely danceable grooves, and they gave this album their all. The best part of this album, if it can be believed, is the cohesive way it is written and structured. Because with such disparate genres and song concepts, the album should theoretically be a mess. But with the lyrical themes of violence acting as a kind of narrative through line, each direction the album goes feels organic and considered. Dangerous Liaisons, a flamenco noise rock screamer, gets my song of the year, hands down.
A blind greedy hoax, the joke of all jokes.
With the push and pull of dance, pulling you along this tale of murder and burning and hellfire, it is a shocker that these guys are my age. If your boomer uncle tells you that all rock is dead now, put this album on and watch him die instantly. I think I have a copy of this next one, hang on. Number 8 goes to a Polish film about a nun. Does that sound boring to you? Well, you're wrong.
Nazywa się Wanda Gruz. To jest jedyna siostry krewna. Powinna ją siostra poznać, zanim złoży śluby.
Ida was written by Rebecca Lewin. I really like this lady's work. She also wrote Disobedience. Google. Hey Google, auto-translate.
I'm Rebecca Lenkovich.
The film was directed by Paweł Pawłowski. Why do people have to be Polish?
Paweł Pawlikowski's.
This guy is most well known for 2018's Cold War, which won Best Director at Cannes and was nominated for several Oscars. Ida is slow, patient, and meditative. It's about a girl who is about to become a nun, and she goes to visit her only living relative. The two women go on a road trip across Poland to find answers about family members who went missing during World War II. The story and the characters are very well done. Both of these women serve as an odd couple dynamic, but they share a tragic backstory. But the real star of the show is the cinematography. Its use of framing. This is one of the most gorgeous films ever made. The shots themselves, making the characters look as insignificant as they feel. It's a heartbreaker because you really like these characters, and even though they find closure together, if they hadn't have met in the first place, then they might have been better off. It's tragic, and it's sad, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Kim ty jesteś?
ピーター、このエディって主人公どう思う？
そうですね。なんかね、自分にすごく感じが似ていてね。
Avant-garde neo-documentary revisionist horror Greek tragedy art film Funeral Parade of Roses is a 1969 underground film about Japan's queer underbelly.
ゲイボーイをもすごくなんか綺麗に描いてくれるっていうことで撮りました。
It's a movie that I have known about for years because many artists that I love cited it as an inspiration. Before watching this, you should know that the notion of being trans in 60s Japan is different to the modern notion. The main actor saw himself as a performance artist first and foremost. He would actually go on to give an amazing performance in Kurosawa's Ran. But this film, In a Bubble, is a delightful time capsule, a look into the past of what queerness was like in a different time and a different place. The film will also break the fourth wall on you when you don't expect it, because it's an art film and this director is trying to make a documentary while also making a fiction film at the same time. It also happens to be one of the most casually gorgeous films I've ever seen in my entire life. Funeral Parade of Roses is like a Sudoku puzzle. It's complicated to the uninitiated, but it's actually gorgeously simple at heart, and it is deeply satisfying to solve. I've avoided Depeche Mode for the past decade because I thought they were a nu metal band. I thought they were Deftones for some reason. And no hate towards Deftones, but I really don't like nu metal. It's cringy and it's tacky, and I'm just not a fan. So, someone recommended me this album. I can't remember who, why, how, when. But after 40 minutes, my entire life changed. Violator is a depraved album about lusting after drugs and the flesh. It is a miserable album where the lyrics wallow in misery, only to claw their way out in the end. It has a goth rock ambiance, a synth-heavy palette, and a post-punk attitude towards genre. It might be the best 80s album to not come out in the 80s. The songwriting is unbelievably good, with hooks and passages that linger in your mind after not hearing it for so long. The production for 1990 is insane. It sounds like it could be made today, and it would still sound fresh, but what I love most of all is the gloomy atmosphere, the ability to instantly transport you to a different place in a different time. I feel like I'm walking down a sleazy alleyway where all of those who can't go to bed yet sit and smoke. It also happens to contain echoes of my favourite album ever, and one day I'm going to talk about that connection extensively. This album inspired a future video. It's great.
Good.
Well, well, well. If it isn't the movie that everyone calls an indie gem, yet everyone knows about it. I'm just going to call it everything. But this year was truly the year for long gaudy titles with psychedelic posters. And everything was the best of them. The directors of Swiss Army Man, the Harry Potter Fighting Corpse movie, gave the world the best multiverse movie. Period. A trend that I'm already sick of. It's a movie about many things. A parent's responsibility to guide their children through nihilism, kung fu, the warmth of masculinity, generational trauma, butt plugs, the list goes on. It was my favourite movie of 2022 up until very recently, and it profoundly affected me. It's a creative nightmare that packs so much into its runtime that it becomes exhausting. If I were a few years younger and maybe a touch less cynical, it might be my favourite movie ever.
Don't let anything distract you from it.
When Kentaro Miura died, so many people wept. I learned that so much of what I love, especially Dark Souls, came from his magnum opus Berserk. So when he died, I bought a couple of volumes of the manga to experience the art for myself. I had heard that it was violent and yucky, so I didn't expect very much from the story. I just wanted to see some cool swords and dragons. I read the first omnibus, didn't get the hype, and moved on to other things. Then I saw this video essay by Lady Emily, and decided to watch the 1997 adaptation of the first quarter of Berserk. It took about 11 episodes for me to become completely on board with the show, and I watched those episodes over the course of about 4 months. It looked pretty, I liked the characters well enough, but I struggled to care, really. But the final 15 episodes, I watched it all in 2 days. Once Casca and Guts fall off of the cliff, my entire perspective on the show shifted. It's a Japanese anime with a medieval European setting, where a lone swordsman joins a crew of mercenaries and fights in wars and fights fantastic monsters. But it's so much more than that. It has a surprisingly tender emotional core, with fascinating characters and a brilliant little Game of Thrones being played along in the background. I adore the animation style so much. I love that 90s anime aesthetic. I love the minimalism and the charm of it all. The ending, which I didn't have spoiled for me, happens to be one of the cruelest things I've ever seen in my entire life. A desperate sense of betrayal swept over me. I felt like I was going to throw up from stress, and I had this major pain in my belly. And I loved it. If you're squeamish, maybe skip it. Showa is a 9.5-hour documentary about the Holocaust, and it doesn't feature a single piece of archived footage. Instead, it interviews survivors, guards, locals, and it lets us hear from the people themselves. It is a document of living history. It is so sprawling, complex, and layered that it is impossible to speak about in an abridged manner. Instead, I came to realize that Showa might be one of the most important films ever made. I have talked about this already in my anti-Semitism series, and I mentioned there that the scene outside of the Polish church absolutely haunts me. But it's more than just that scene. No detail is too insignificant, and each story is one part of a larger whole. Before I unveil my favourite thing of 2022, I'm going to give a list of honourable mentions, things that I cut but I loved nonetheless. On the Count of 3, a black comedy about a pair of suicidal friends on their last day of Earth. It is as funny as it is bleak, and it was so up my alley. Nope. Blockbuster of the year. So creative, so much spectacle, so weird. Please keep bringing them, Jordan Peele. Decision to Leave. The prettiest movie of the year. Without a doubt, it is a technical marvel. I love Park Chan-wook so much, and even though this was a melodrama and it wasn't for me, I still relished it, and I'm so glad he could get it made. There are scenes in this movie where people just text, and it's the prettiest thing ever. It's one of those movies where I just yell at the screen, and I just tell them to stop it because it's making me feel inadequate as an artist. Tar has my favourite dramatic performance of the year. Cate Blanchett serves can't and composes music. What else is there that you could ever want? Hardcore. The artist Waste Blood recommended this on her social media, same with Funeral Parade of Roses. A conservative Calvinist tries to quote-unquote save his daughter from the porn industry. It's bleak, it's incredible. Thank you very much, Paul Schrader, for ruining my day. Emily the Criminal. This movie turned me into an Audrey Plaza fan instantly. It's a politically conscious thriller that goes places that you don't expect. You can guess how the film's going to end, but you don't know how it's going to arrive. It is breathless. After Yang. A gorgeous meditation on grief and personhood. Colin Farrell gave us 4 brilliant performances this year, and this was my favourite of his. Mr. Morale on the Big Steppers. Kung Fu Kenny came back and dropped an incredible album meditating on his own mental health, and he has never sounded healthier, and I love that for him. The album features my favourite final run of songs of the year, from Savior to Mirror. Phenomenal stuff. Can't believe Kendrick also said trans rights. My metal album of the year. Hostile Architecture is a meditation on capitalist realism and brutalism architecture, with a dash of Scottish hardcore punk and noise. It was like candy to my ears. Thank you very much, Melon, for your recommendation. Harold and Maude. A suicidal young man befriends an older woman. She teaches him to appreciate life more. It is a marvelous picture. And I'm gonna get it for my dad for Christmas, because he loves Cat Stevens. The Hunger. This is an 80s vampire movie that my mom showed me. It is so visually striking. One of the best movies I've ever seen in my goddamn piece of shit life. It's a bit light on for plot, but the visuals remain imprinted in my memory. Denying History. My second favourite book of the year was by Jewish scholar Deborah Lipstadt. This book was the first large-scale attempt to debunk the Holocaust, and it is incisive with its critiques of deniers. I really wish I read this book before I finished my Port Arthur series. I'm going to talk about this book extensively in Anti-Semitism Part 2. Blasphemous. A Souls-like Metroidvania drenched in Catholic dread. What an incredible art style. This game, I devoured it back in January. The Procession to Cavalry. The funniest thing I consumed all year. I played this game 3 times through, and it still ruins me with its sense of humour. I also completely stole the art style for when I did my Bible study with Angus Fig. Metro Exodus. The opening 2 zones are some of the most satisfying gameplay I have consumed in the past 2 years. It's like Russian Fallout, except good. Number 1 on my list, The Golden Goose. Absolutely blew me away. I cannot say enough nice things about it. What could it be? Barbarian? Barbarian. Barbarian!
Who's there?
Okay, look, intellectually, I know that Showa or Everything Everywhere All at Once are better movies. You know, more clever, more important, grander in theme. But Barbarian was so special to me because, if you haven't noticed already, I'm a miserable prick. All of the movies on my list are about lost souls, victims of violence and circumstance. I love to explore the darker aspects of the human experience, but it's never fun to go down that road. I rarely have fun watching a movie. I play script doctor in my brain, and I clinically analyse all of the things that went wrong and how they could have been done better. Barbarian overrode that part of my brain. It's a flawed movie. Quite a flawed movie. But it has been several years since I've had this much fun with anything. An Airbnb is double booked, a girl shows up, and creepy Bill Skarsgård is there. You believe that it's setting up a classic creepy man movie, but after that first act, it goes in a direction of which no one could ever predict. And it introduces the funniest character I've seen in a movie this year. I am deeply in love with Justin Long after this movie.
Yeah, bitch.
I will watch everything and anything that man is in from now on. He is the only man who's allowed to be misogynistic. Says the man. I want to try and be vague because everyone should see this movie. Also, very soon I'm planning on making a video about it. I was going to do it before I wrote this video, but then I was put on the back burner. Barbarian has everything I love in horror. It's absurd, it's creepy, it's tense, it's funny, it's creative, it's unpredictable, and it has some serious food for thought. The themes, like Boiling Point, are an extra serving of flavour. You have a little bit about Reaganomics. You have some critiques of masculinity. But at the forefront, you have a supremely entertaining picture. Barbarian finally cemented something in my mind that I am over elevated horror. I don't need any more movies about a monster that represents grief or colonialism. I like those movies for what they are, but they are viscerally boring. Movies are meant to be entertaining. Give me a movie with excellent pacing and a fucked up lady. That's all I need from now on. Genuinely. I feel as if I've been dead for years. Barbarian reminded me of what it was like to feel alive. A glint of light from a subterranean prison, but a glint nonetheless. Expect a video at this topic coming very soon.
This is perfectly natural.
Well, that's the cream of the crop, the best of the best. Now let's descend into a stinky hell and talk about the worst things that I saw of the year. Every now and again, I shoot some friends a message where I simply proclaim, I am choosing violence. And then I watch like a Z-grade dogshit terrible movie. I usually do this when I'm depressed, and I need to turn the noise off in my brain. Luckily, I didn't choose violence that much this year. Nevertheless, I love the sensation of my brain melting, my blood pressure rising, and my frustration reaching a boiling point. Ah, mon chéri, mwah. These spots are reserved for some of the biggest dumpster fires I saw this year.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
This movie became a meme online this year. Fruity Pinocchio goes on an adventure. Haha, funny memes. Don't watch it. It is terrible. The animation looks horrendous, the voice acting is atrocious, and it is very boring to watch. There are horrible, trashy musical numbers with terrible audio mixing, and it completely fumbles everything that made the original story interesting. Just watch like Del Toro's Pinocchio because it is so good. Oh my goodness, it is wonderful. I will say though, the reason why it's number 3 and not number 2 is that the lead performance greatly adds to the entertainment value.
You can go.
Thank you, Daddy. I knew you wouldn't say no. Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures await!
See you later, my dear Geppetto!
I caught myself repeating so many lines and giggling along. I had to use questionable means to find the fruity cut online because they've redubbed the movie with a weird Russian guy and it's worse. Significantly worse. I don't think I ever want to watch this again. I might force some people to watch it one day, but it was fun while it's on, I guess, even though oh god, it was so bad.
Samurai Hank, you have to do something!
You're under arrest.
Believe it or not, I have been following the development of this movie since 2019, and I kept an eye on it because the premise of this movie is transcendentally terrible. Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank is an animated remake of Blazing Saddles, the classic 1970s Western satire, but with cats and dogs, and with samurai instead of cowboys. It was originally meant to be called Blazing Samurai, and I will die angry that they changed the title of the movie. It is the worst movie of 2022, and I hate it with every fibre of my being. The voice actors all sound bored, the animation is horrible, there's blatant use of concept art, like, in place of animation. It is ridiculously unfunny. It is so lazy, yet it exhausts every single joke, and it completely fumbles what made the original premise of Blazing Saddles interesting. This is not an excuse to make a dog and cat racism movie, because please don't. It adds a dash of Kung Fu Panda to Blazing Saddles, and it goes together like fish and Tim Tams. Like Blazing Saddles, it tries to have a joke every other second. And when most of the jokes are actually funny, the ones that don't land can't linger on. Paws of Fury has no funny jokes, and it over-relies on fourth wall breaking self-aware humour and fart jokes. It is an excruciating experience that is so boring, you gain nothing from it, and I hate it with every fibre of my being. There's no reason as to why anyone is an animal, but at the same time they use every single lazy joke imaginable. It was marginally better than I expected. Primarily because the art direction isn't terrible, because it's stealing most of its ideas from Kung Fu Panda. I hope that all the actors got paid well, I hope all the animators were treated with kindness, because it's just the worst movie. The only reason it isn't at number 1 of this list is because it doesn't end with a dance number, which I was honestly shocked over. I can't believe the people who made Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank have an ounce of artistic integrity. And the award for the worst movie I saw this year goes to Eli Roth's disaster Knock Knock.
Who's there? Yes?
We're so sorry to bother you, sir. My phone got wet and she left hers at her house.
Released in 2015, this movie is dog shit. Keanu Reeves plays a dad who is home alone while his family is on vacation. Then, 2 sexy co-eds knock on his door and try to seduce him. It frames itself as a tongue-in-cheek erotic thriller. Now, I really like a good erotic thriller. Give me a sexy roller coaster ride and I will likely have a very good time, even if it's trashy. But this movie is completely disinterested in eroticism. Instead, it focuses on an adolescent titillation. The film, in leering at its 2 female leads, comes across more uncomfortable than alluring. It feels like I accidentally walked in on someone while they were showering. I just want to cover my eyes out of a sense of embarrassment. The entire affair is miserable, with a terrible script and uninspired cinematography. I don't like those Sharknado movies because they know they're bad and they use that as an excuse to not put any effort into themselves. The fun of a bad movie comes from the effort someone puts into a terrible idea. I'm entertained by misplaced effort and unbelievable hubris. That's what makes it fun. When it comes to Knock Knock, Eli Roth wanted to make a crappy B-movie because that's what he likes, and he used that as an excuse to not put any actual effort into anything, because B-movies are supposed to be bad, I guess. Knock Knock isn't bad enough to laugh at, it's just bad. And I never want to see it again. Everyone should feel very ashamed of themselves for being a part of it. I will likely watch the famous monologue a few times though.
You came to my house. You came to me. I got you a car. I brought you your clothes. You took a fucking bubble bath. You wanted it. You wanted it. You came out to me. What was I supposed to do? You sucked my cock. You both fucking sucked my cock. It was free pizza.
This is a special award. Sometimes a piece of media completely snaps your brain in two and you just have a laughing meltdown and reaction, leaving you in a giggly puddle on the floor. There's a handful of movies that have done that to me. Vampire's Kiss, The Book of Henry, Southland Tales. And joining that short list is the classic 50s musical, 7 Wives for 7 Brothers. Allow me to set the scene for you, okay? My dearest friend in the world is down from Melbourne. I haven't seen them in person for a year and a half. We are at a pair of dear friends' house. I treasure them as well. We are staying the night. It is late. We've just had ramen noodles. We're eating Sour Patch Kids and Tim Tams. And our host makes us watch a movie from her childhood.
Bless your beautiful hide, wherever you may be.
It's a charming musical with a feminist twist. A new housewife has to whip her husband's brothers into shape. Haha, funny comedy. But the movie is incredibly sexist. It's odd but entertaining. It's incredibly well made. It has really good choreography, like, oh my goodness. I have an apprehension about musicals. I hate most of them. Love music, love movies, hate musicals. Then this number comes on, called the Sobbin' Wives song. I don't know if I can play any of this because of copyright, I'll have to experiment. But the characters dance as they decide to raid the local township of all of the women, bringing them home sobbing and crying, and they use the Bible story of the sobbing wives as justification.
Read about it here in Millie's book.
Oh, book.
Oh, this is history. This really happened.
Tell you about them sobbing women who lived in the Roman days.
The main character tucks at the men's behaviour, and shenanigans ensue, but I'm on the couch, and I'm losing my goddamn mind.
Oh yes, them women were sobbing, 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 rocketing tears. Mighty sad.
Especially since I did all the research for the anti-Semitism series. I actually paid attention to Bible stories, and they're clearly they're quoting the Bible and they're taking in vain the story of the sobbing wives, which was a historic Roman war crime. An entire village of men and boys was slaughtered and the women were captured and sold into sexual slavery. But it's just this jaunty musical number, sobbing, sobbing wives, you know?
Why don't we go down and get him?
Oh yes, them women were sobbing, sobbing, sobbing women. Them sobbing women.
Imagine 1,000 years from now, okay? Imagine. Someone makes a jaunty musical number about the Holocaust. It is the exact same level of sensitivity. It's like a group of barbarians prancing and singing about how they're going to pillage a village. I had this incredible laughing meltdown. I was a giggly puddle for 5 minutes. We had to pause the movie until I calmed down. I embarrassed myself greatly, and I treasure that memory. Please do more movie nights with me, Marina. Me. This award goes to the best punch I saw in a movie. Tokyo Fist is by Shinya Tsukamoto, the guy who did Tetsuo the Iron Man, and it has this punch. Warning for blood. I know it's technically 2 punches, but I consider it to be a jab and then a punch. It's awesome. It's a great movie. Watch it. This award goes to the film that occupied my thoughts the most this year. It's not for the best, but the most fascinating movie. Previous winners would be Saw 6, because I did an entire video about that this year. Hard Candy was released in 2005. It was made by the dude who made Twilight Eclipse. It's the breakout performance of Elliot Page, and it has him acting across Patrick Wilson. Gonna be using she/her pronouns because, the character is a lady, but obviously Elliot is a man. Elliot plays Haley, a 14-year-old girl who meets a pedophile in an internet chat room. She then proceeds to entrap and torture him. It's a movie where 2 people talk in a room for 1 hour and 40 minutes, and it is deeply captivating.
What did you...
You remember what I said about not drinking anything you didn't mix yourself? That's good advice for everyone.
It's a push and pull script, and it is impossible to look away. Based on the premise, you would expect it to be wildly violent and silly, but it isn't really. The violence is often implied off-screen. There's a scene where Elliot gives Wilson an orchidectomy, and it makes you squirm out of your little pants. In every scene, you feel truly captivated, and that is the highest compliment I can give the film. But there are deep, deep problems with the script. This is the kind of story where I just want to play script doctor with it. I want you to go in and give the script another draft. Remove this and include that. It's a story with the airs of a genius script. It's sort of clever, but it falls just short of greatness. The biggest problem with the movie is how it conveys the perspective in which you should watch it. Because in a post-Me Too world, we immediately empathize with the Haley character. But the script invites us to think that she's crazy. Not in a cynical, women be shopping kind of way, but for the sake of drama. The film is trying to be feminist.
Go to jail. Isn't that what should happen?
Yeah, you might get jail time. I don't know, therapy, drugs, group discussions, notifying people when you move into a new house. How bad is that really?
It'll ruin my career, it'll ruin my life.
Come on, didn't Roman Polanski just win an Oscar?
But it presupposes the audience is male. All of the head creatives are men, And Haley sounds like she was written by a 30-year-old man, so you have this tension in your mind. The film's intent is to lure you into a guessing game, but that is ruined because of the time that we now live in. It's not a fault of the movie directly, rather it's a fascinating relic of a previous era in film, where empathizing with younger female characters was novel and calls for some tension and drama. It fumbles that unintentionally. The performances are very good, it's shot very well, the colour palette is very nice, but I hate the shaky cam and the editing at times. It's a confounding movie. I'm normally pretty good at clocking whether or not I like something after I consume it. I can usually be like, okay, that's probably like an 8 out of 10 or something, even though number ratings aren't real. But I genuinely did not know if Hard Candy was genius or delusional. It existed upon a spectrum, and it was one or the other. And I read so much about this movie. I read every review I could find just to figure out, like, what the hell is wrong with it? And eventually I ended on the problem that it's just the script. The screenplay is flawed. But that is not an insult, because sure, the mechanics of the plot are wonky, but it is nonetheless captivating. It lingers with you because it's clever, but not smart, if that makes any sense. It's the kind of movie which needs you to know how clever it is. All the setups and payoffs are given to you on the first watch. There's not really much value in watching it multiple times. And because of that, it becomes frustrating. In the end, Hard Candy is a confounding movie that I cannot stop thinking about this year. I was going to make a video on it, but then I watched it again and be like, it's not really worth the energy of like spending a month of my life thinking about the movie. I still really like it in the end. It's just like, oh goodness. I tend to lean towards the avant-garde, the strange, the queer, the odd. So this award goes to the strangest movie I watched in 2022. The Happiness of the Katakuris is a remake of a Korean film called The Quiet Family by Kim Ji-woon. I'd seen that movie previously and I thought it was fine. It's about a family which runs a motel on the hills outside of town, and their guests keep dying in their rooms and they have to rush to hide the bodies before more guests come along. So comes the remake by Takashi Miike, who is one of the most shocking directors to ever grace the big screen. He's honestly a bit hit or miss for me. Love Audition. Really don't like Visitor Q. If it made an award for the grossest movie of the year, Visitor Q would definitely get it. The Happiness of the Katakuris, however, is delightful. It features strange claymation, bizarre characters, and best of all, musical numbers. None of that was in the original. I think this is like the 4th musical I've ever liked. It takes the black humour from the original and charcoals it tenfold. There are lovely musical numbers while people are burying dead bodies, and then the corpses decide to join in. It's a completely unpredictable movie, even though I knew where the plot was going. Each bizarre character, silly twist, left me cackling with laughter and made me grin from ear to ear. It's a film experience that I will be showing many of my friends and thinking about for years to come. Treat yourself, please. I am an appreciator of the art of screenwriting. It allows the soul to speak, and this category goes to the lines that made me laugh the most. The genius, the clever. Not Okay is a 2022 comedy about a girl who fakes being in a terrorist attack for Instagram clout. It's a riot. I watched it like yesterday and it was awesome. I normally don't like movies that use Zoomer slang and satirize internet culture because they generally come across as uninformed and they get dated pretty quickly. But this movie is hilarious to me. A little bit, some of it's cringe, but you know what, you should kill the part of you that cringes. My favourite line is like the 5th line in the entire movie. The character is trying to become a writer at a job, and her boss is like reading an article that she wrote, and she's like cussing her out for like her weird takes. And then she just suddenly says this.
In general, I think we try to avoid expressing any kind of FOMO about 9/11.
It's genius. It sets up this character as a narcissist, devoid of all empathy, all the while being very, very funny. I had to pause the movie to stop giggling. It was great. Probably never gonna watch that movie again, but I will remember that fucking line. I know we just spoke about the Happiness of the Categories, but there is one line in it which made me lose my goddamn mind. Context. Lady here is being scammed by a dude. There's a romantic musical number in the middle of a trash dump. This is pretty normal for the movie. And the scam artist's nose starts bleeding.
鼻血が出たのはスケベだからではなく、頭の働きを助けるために血液が頭に上ってくるわけですが、私は外人。
Mwah! Magnifique! Who thought of that? Why did you... Why did you decide to put that in your movie? That's so bizarre. Why is the color timing completely different? Barbarian has already won my movie of the year, my favorite thing of the entire year ever. Maybe my favorite movie of like the last couple of years, but it has a single line. And it was when I realized that the movie was my favorite thing ever. It turned this really tense horror movie, bordering on a thriller, into an uproarious comedy with one phrase. Justin Long plays an actor who's just been Me Too'd. He's out of the state trying to get money for his legal defense. He's rude to his mum who's on the phone to him, and he hangs up on her suddenly when a bro calls him.
Work call.
Oh, okay, baby, I love...
What up, faggot? Guess who's back in town?
Tactical slur of the year. This and Black Meaty's Eat Men Eat made me a lot more comfortable with just saying faggot around my queer friends. Justin Long gets the pass, he's bi. Anyways, not only does this change the tone of the movie dramatically, but it economically conveys so much about this character. He's sort of like, I mean, like, you're not feeling sorry for him because he's just been Me Too'd, it's like terrible. But you're like, oh, this is sad that this is happening to a person, I suppose. And then he just says that and you're like, oh! Okay, this guy's a real piece of shit. It's legitimately genius. I cannot believe that movie. Oh man, Barbarian. I love it because people like this haven't been in horror movies for a very long time. I hope that these horrible people, deeply misguided and completely unaware of their own circumstances, are put back into mainstream horror movies because I just want to see them. Oh boy, I want to get them. I say this in every single video, but I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was a kid, and Asperger's isn't real, but I just go by and say that I'm autistic. So when I say that this is the Autism Award, it is a very high compliment from me. The final award goes to my biggest special interest of the year. Generally, this is a topic of special interest or a specific niche that I fell into hard. Previous winners of this category would be like the Port Arthur Massacre or Korean cinema. My interest in Judaism started when I was researching conspiracy theories last year, and I began researching the religion because I wanted to understand historically why they had been persecuted so much. And I have now read like a dozen books on the topic. Probably an exaggeration, it's probably around like 6 or 7. And I have become infatuated by this culture. Right here I want to highlight my love for Jewish cinema, because I like movies and I find them easier to approach than like a lengthy academic book. I gotta find that thing. Oh, my butt. At my local art house cinema, there was even a Jewish film festival. I wasn't able to see much because it was around exam time, but it was really lovely to see, especially since like Tasmania doesn't have a very big Jewish population. There's like 600 Jews in Tasmania. Many of my favorite movies were discussed earlier in this video, but what I love about Jewish cinema so much is this like sense of endurance and having a true sense of humor, but to be able to laugh at yourself. So many Jewish movies deal with suffering with a smile. Along with all the books that I read, it was truly a privilege to take a deep dive into something I previously knew nothing about. And that is it for 2022. This year was a bit weird for me. Got COVID back in June. There was like a breakup in there. There was like some weird family stuff, as is usual for me. I didn't really make any friends because I kind of just like sat at home all day, every day. But I'm really proud of everything that I did and I wouldn't change it for a second. I'm an introvert anyway, so I don't like going outside. I feel as if that I grew as an artist and a performer and an entertainer. And I hope that you enjoyed watching this admittedly very chaotic list, because I enjoyed making it. This was originally like twice as long, and there was all kinds of like video essays and a specific category for like video games and TV shows. But it just was too much, and I wanted to get this out before the end of the year. Hence is why I got like my little Christmas cats. All I can really say is thank you very much for watching me for another year. I don't really have any plans for this upcoming year. Like, I'm planning on getting my license. I'm hoping to finish my undergraduate at university, then I'm hoping that I get offered honours or like postgraduate stuff, because I really want to do that my Port Arthur project as a thesis. I like working on these larger series because it's something to chip away at. Like, oh, I read one more book, that's like a chapter done, whatever. But this year, I really enjoyed my more spontaneous videos. Like, I finished my Port Arthur series and I made, like, the Saw 6 one was one I was playing for a little while because me and my friend Peter just, like, talked about it non-stop. But my favorite videos this year are, like, the Lingua Ignota one and the Knitram one because, like, I guess each one, respectively, I've been thinking about for, like, ages beforehand, but it was spontaneous to create them, and I just really enjoyed, like, dedicating a month of my life each to, like, these really interesting topics. It's also probably because they were very, like, emotional to put together, and, like, they hurt my feelings a lot. But those two videos fucking wrecked me. I had to go to bed sad after each one, but I wouldn't change it because I'm so proud of how those came out. In particular, I've been really touched with the response to the Lingua Ignota video. You know, I like writing about conspiracy theories and anti-Semitism, but I tend to do so in something of a detached manner. Because I'm pretending that I'm like a scholar, because that's what you do when you write about these really, you know, tense and sad things. I want to continue making high-effort, research-focused videos, but I want those larger projects to be more organic, and I really want to try and focus on the more spontaneous stuff this year. Like I said, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you will catch me next time. The anti-Semitism video should be out in January, and I'm planning on having the Barbarian video out shortly after that, if not before. It's sort of complicated. Have a good holidays, and I'll catch you next time.